input. Any other public input that we didn't already address? And this is specifically to the Budget Committee for our meeting purposes. Hearing and seeing nobody raising their hands, we'll close public input. There'll be one more opportunity for public input before we conclude this evening. Next up on the agenda is correspondence. As with past meetings, I have a list of correspondence that has come in over the past week, so bear with me. And Ms. Forty, as always, please keep me honest here. On January 8th, Mr. Hayes sent edits to the budget hearing presentation. On January 8th, Ms. Forty performed a review of the MS-27 form. January 8th, there was the weekly town budget report that we typically receive on Fridays. On January 9th, there was an email from the zoning board, Mr. Rick Riley, on their budget request for an increase. I also requested that Mr. Rick Riley join this evening. He is not able to do so due to a conflict in his schedule. On January 12th, there was email exchange with Mr. Izvicki on the MS-27 form itself. On January 12th, there was also an email with Mr. Brown highlighting changes to warrant articles based upon the Board of Selectmen meeting. On January 12th, there was an email exchange on deliberative session and town meeting planning, and just kind of working out the logistics of those sessions that are forthcoming. On January 12th, Ms. Douglas sent edits to the budget hearing presentation. Thank you again for submitting your edits. On January 12th, there was the email from Ms. Leary, which was shared with the committee. I forwarded it to the committee as well as read it into the public minutes for the hearing a moment ago. On January 13th, there was email exchange on the deliberative session planning. On January 13th, I know Town Administrator Brown, you had sent out some information on NH bond bank rates for the upcoming year. On January 13th, Dr. Getty, you had sent some final comments on the budget hearing presentation and just corrections on Article 1 voting. Thank you for letting me know. And then on January 14th, we also have the email that was sent to the committee, sent to Michelle for the minutes this evening, and that was from Mrs. Dodge, which was read at the budget hearing in public comment a few moments ago. I think that covers all the correspondence. Ms. Forty, anything else to add?
No, you're good.
Okay, thank you very much. And so with that, we're going to move into town business here. We have some final voting on the town side. We have 2 warrant articles to vote. So let me just pull them up here. I can share my screen again, maybe. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So we have Article 4, which is pending recommendation by the Budget Committee. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-0-0, and this was based upon some of the updates and changes that we made on the January 7th meeting based upon the library requests for increases. Before we vote, I do think it's important. I want to make sure we give credit to the zoning board. Mr. Rick Riley did send me an email with some information on their requests. That information was shared with the committee. They're estimating somewhere, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere around $350 per notice when we were budgeting far less than that. And so the request, although there wasn't an actual dollar amount associated with the request is to essentially, if I'm interpreting what they would like, is somewhere around $2,500 in the public notice line for the zoning board budget. If we do add that money at this point in time, there would be a change to the bottom line for the operating budget, which would require a revote by the Board of Selectmen. Are there any thoughts or comments on the zoning board request? Mr. Town Administrator Brown, I don't know if you have anything to add there as well.
Well, I would like to add that I think we're at a point now where we're up against the clock, and I think we've got a pretty good budget here that we've put together in with the Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee. And the information that Mr. Riley provided is true, and the problem is the added cost really is being driven by the information that we have to put in the legal notice for the COVID requirements of advertising the public hearings. So, but with all that being said, at this point in time, I would like to think that we would be able to absorb whatever cost. We will go over on this line, there's no doubt, and it's all driven by the number of cases that we have, and that we could exceed this line by as much as $2,500. But I'd like to think that we can find other places in the budget to cover that overage. We would monitor it throughout the year. And then I think it's something that the budget committee and selectmen can look at next year to see if we actually do have the correct amount budgeted for this line item. But at this point in time, for me to, for the Board of Selectmen to meet again and get things revised and get we got to get this budget finalized, signed, and posted. I think that we should stick with the budget as the budget committee has recommended today.
Thank you. Any final thoughts from the budget committee?
I think Troy's absolutely right on this. We've been trying to get numbers from them for a while, and we'll have to absorb the cost. I think the budget committee's done a great job cutting on this budget and getting it to the point where it is now, and it's a workable budget. So I would say we should move on as a selectman. They move on.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to make a motion to approve Article 4 as written.
Second.
I heard a second from Ms. Douglas. Any additional discussion, please?
All I would like to say, hi, this is Nikki. Just I do agree with Town Administrator Brown. And what I would say is that perhaps when we go into budget next year, as much as possible, if people actually involved in the different accounts are able to present to us, it could head off some of the miscommunications or delays in getting the correct information. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Forty. Final comments before we proceed with roll call vote.
No,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, before we do vote on this, my understanding is there not another article for $50,000 for legal fees?
Yes.
Okay, so once again, so with that article, will it not put us over the tax cap?
No. Expendable trust fund. Unassigned fund balance, I'm sorry. No tax.
Any other questions?
But there are the warrant articles that come from the unassigned fund balance that we couldn't vote on because it would bring us over the tax cap, correct?
But
Let's see.
No, there's no tax impact. There's no tax impact, but it's still dollars.
it's unassigned
wrong?
fund money.
Well, I guess that's a question for Town Administrator Brown, right?
Okay.
So, Troy, would you be able to confirm if there's any impact to the tax cap? Should we proceed with voting on the $50,000? I want to make sure that we have a motion and a second here for the operating budget. I want to keep it on scope to what we're doing right now and not the next article. But if you could just comment on that quickly.
Yeah. So as we stated earlier, Chairman Carter stated earlier in the presentation, if all of the articles are approved, the tax cap will be $1. Will be $1 below the tax cap. So that $50,000 article is a special warrant article. It's a non-lapsing warrant article. So the funds will be preserved for about 3 years for that specific purpose, which is the Pennachuck rate case. And we're proposing to fund the entire cost using the unassigned fund balance. So there wouldn't be any taxation, no new taxation in 2021.
So any warrant article
Thank
you
you.
present that you're going to use the unassigned fund balance has no tax impact. So you can just throw in like as many of those as you want and it won't affect your tax cap.
It would, well, I know that you've heard my explanation with the use of the unassigned fund balance.
I understand I understand that. I understand the tax cap also. But my point is, so we just throw in warrant articles with dollar amounts coming from the unassigned fund balance, but hey, that doesn't affect the tax cap. So it's okay? I just wanted to get clarification so I can understand this and the people listening can
So
understand.
when we have a warrant article that's proposed to be funded 100% from the unassigned fund balance, it represents no new taxation and it has no impact on the tax cap.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for Article 4. Final discussion before we do a roll call vote, please. Okay, hearing none. We'll start with Ms. Forty.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Hodgkins. Mr. Hodgkins, I actually don't know if Mr. Hodgkins is on. Let's see.
He is not.
No, okay. Mr. Hayes.
No.
No. Mr. Sun.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. That passes 7-1-0. Okay. Next up in terms of the town is we have Article, I believe it's 10, yes, which is Pennachuck East utility rate increase. Based upon the comments by Mr. Burke a moment ago, this is a new warrant article that was approved by the Board of Selectmen for inclusion. And this is raising $50,000 for the legal costs associated. I will make a motion to approve Article 10 as written.
Second.
Give a second by Mr. Leary. Discussion, please.
Maybe have Troy explain this to the rest of the committee, exactly what our thinking was on this. Those that are confused can be cleared up in their minds anyways.
Mr. Brown.
Sure. Yeah, so I think many of us are aware that Pennachuck East has come forward with a petition to increase the water rates here in our community as well as other communities that are served by Pennachuck East Utility. That rate increase is proposed, I think, at 21.5%. And there's a formal process that will occur over the next 18 months.
Yes.
The Board of Selectmen have asked me to reach out to surrounding communities to see if there'd be an interest in joining forces and sharing legal costs to try to follow this rate case and consult with some experts to see what's driving the rate increase, to see if it's fair and equitable. If many of us might recall that about 3 years ago, we had another rate increase that was somewhere in this range of 18 to 20%. It just seems that Pennachuck continues to increase their rates, and for something that we all need, which is clean, safe drinking water. As you know, a lot of our residents recently were actually required to hook up to this water system. It wasn't by choice because St. Gobain had contaminated their wells. So this article is written, it's very special. This is a special warrant article that is non-lapsing. So as you can see, it will we will continue to be able to use it for this purpose or until December 31st, 2023. We would hope that this case is resolved by then. We are proposing to use the unassigned fund balance so that there wouldn't be any new taxation in 2021. As of right now, we have a commitment from the town of Londonderry. Litchfield has committed, and we have two other communities, Wyndham and Pelham, that are pending approval from their boards. They've yet to have a public meeting to discuss this. It sounds promising that those two towns will join this effort as well.
Thank you very much. Further discussion before we do a roll call vote, please. Okay, hearing none. We'll start with Ms. Forty.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Sun,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
Aye.
and I am also an aye. That passes 8-0-0. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. That concludes the town voting. All articles have been voted on at this point, and now we're going to shift gears into school. There was an addition to tonight's agenda to review Articles 2 and 3. Actually, let me reshare and just bring those up, actually.
Mr. Chair, while you're doing that, just a clarification on the process for this. Do we need a motion to revote Articles 2 and 3?
I believe that is the case, yes. Because we've already voted, we'll need a motion to open it up again and then a motion to actually vote if the committee would like to reopen it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Douglas or somebody else, please.
We need to do that.
And I'm pretty certain also that the same person who made the motion last time cannot make the motion again this time.
Thank you.
So we would need a motion to reconsider. Is that what
Yeah.
would be the order?
I believe that's the case. Yeah, so a motion to reconsider for Articles 2 and 3. If that passes, then we can revote the articles. And the same two people cannot vote or cannot motion to approve them, which I believe was myself, if I recall.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to revote Articles 2 and 3 of the school warrant articles.
We have a motion by Mr. Sun. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a second by Mr. Burke. Go ahead.
I want to start. I want to start by saying, through this process, we've reduced the overall school district budget by nearly $600,000. We reduced raises for administrators across the district by $70,000. And the two positions that are being asked for in these two warrant articles actually come at a cost savings to the taxpayers of around $8,000. As a committee, one of the things I heard when I joined the budget committee was this idea of collaboration and working together. I can speak for myself and some other members of the committee that we were frustrated when we started with the school board this year and information wasn't shared with us during some of those sessions, the budget itself. We expressed our frustration. The school board heard us, and the school board came back and said they're going to work to improve that process moving forward. As we move into these specific warrant articles, the school district and board did exactly as we asked. They removed the old positions from the budget. They brought the tech integrators forward as warrant articles, and they actually did so at a cost savings to the taxpayers. We're not voting tonight to add money back to the budget. That's something the voters can actually determine in March. But this is an opportunity to show that the school board and the budget committee can work together to find cost savings for the taxpayers, while also still providing a first-class education for our students and provide the supports and tools that our teachers need to be successful. In regards to some comments earlier this evening, specifically Mrs. Leary's email, I personally don't agree with the front office changes at GMS. But unfortunately, I don't think that's also in the purview of the budget committee. The school board and district did find the money for these tech integrator positions outside of the GMS front office changes. And that was through the elimination of those two high school teaching positions. I feel as though we need to separate those two items to move this forward. And regarding Mr. Taylor's comments earlier this evening, and I think I've mentioned this in the past, I know his specific request was around data points and examples of excellence around these two positions. I've mentioned this in the past. I spent over a decade in school districts where these positions worked. They were effective. They provided value to teachers, to students, to the implementation of tools and resources and software. And I can certainly speak to that in more detail as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sun. And if I could just add, right, for my position, I was one of the committee members that voted in favor of Articles 2 and 3, as mentioned at the last committee meeting. I was disappointed in the voting of how this came out for Articles 2 and 3, given the direction of the Budget Committee to place these on warrant articles, given the need for, especially in the year that we're in, with the increased focus of technology and one-to-one learning. And having students in the district myself, I can see really the value of having these tech integrator positions be funded, and also that to Mr. Sun's point, it's not a new or an unreasonable ask by the school district. Right? There's a true identified need. It's part of very clearly the goals and objectives of the school district, which as a committee we've agreed to review and consider, which is what we've done. And based upon the direction of the Budget Committee, once again, that's why these are existing in Articles 2 and 3 at the moment. Further thoughts from committee members?
Mr. Chairman, again, I will say, and I'll ask Mr. Bork, if they are prepared to fund these differently rather than cutting the admin at the elementary school. If he's willing to do that, I'm willing to change my vote. Brian Bork was the one a couple of meetings ago that said the principals are in the trenches and the best judges of what goes on inside the schools. Principal Thompson advocated for these positions, all three of them, to be the full-time ones, but they've cut them from the Budget Committee every time. Mr. Mitchell said he's not in favor of this position being cut back, but he wasn't asked his opinion. So again, I'm saying if they're willing to do that, I'm willing to change my vote. So I guess it lies in their hands. And there are people behind the decisions that we make. Yes, it's a fiscal decision, but there's also people in their lives that are behind these decisions. And you have to think like that also.
So
that's the ball.
Thank you, Mr. Leary.
So Larry, a few things to point out. Number one, I think you really have a conflict of interest on this vote, number one. Mm-hmm. It seems that what you're doing is holding us hostage by letting us know, excuse me, how to spend our money. And that is not your responsibility as a Budget Committee member. We keep talking about a bottom line budget, and that's what it is. You cannot, as a Budget Committee member, direct us how to spend the money.
No.
So where we save the money from and how we utilize that money is the responsibility of the school board and the school district, not the Budget Committee. And if you just say that these positions are needed, but because of the way we're funding them, you won't support them, is so wrong for what your position should stand for.
It's wrong to do, but I have to have a conscience, okay? And I do have a conscience, and I just can't do this to people. You can. You've done it repeatedly. I can't.
I want repeatedly.
For lack of a better term.
Well,
Okay.
let's keep it to point. Let's keep it to point here, right? I
Let's
think
keep it
also, Mr.
personal
Leary.
here, okay?
We can discuss this.
I think, Mr. Leary, right? You are also representing the board, right, and not necessarily your individual opinion. And I'd ask you that if this does get reopened, that you just keep that in mind as well.
And just provide a little background also.
Please.
So this is Dr. Jetty, just speaking on behalf of the goal of what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, it was suggested earlier that we haven't been forthcoming, or that perhaps that I misrepresented something, which couldn't be further from the truth on this. It is true that Principal Thompson came forward and asked for additional time to be added in, but when we examined the staffing across the three schools, we found that Griffin Memorial School had an additional 550 hours a year compared to the middle school or the high school. And we learned that the staffing levels there, in fact, were already well beyond what the other schools were. And so part of this is really a realignment for equity purposes to make sure that all three schools, which are very similar in grade level and makeup, have equalized staffing between them. It is not true that Principal Mitchell, who is new this year, was not consulted on this. He and I had a conversation. I asked him to reflect on the staffing level that he had at the Peter Woodbury School in Bedford. The Peter Woodbury School in Bedford, which has twice the students, or I'm sorry, has a similar number of students to Griffin, has one full-time administrative assistant in the office and one school year receptionist. He's coming into a school that has 3 full-time year-round administrative assistants. And so I pointed out to him that he's worked in an environment that is very different. I can understand he needs to support his staff. And he's been very good about supporting his staff, but he also recognized that the staffing levels he inherited were far generous compared to those that he came from in the Bedford School District. And one can hardly argue that the Bedford School District doesn't have outstanding schools and outstanding support for their administrators and their teachers. The other thing that's important to point out is that, I personally went over and I met with the administrative assistants at the school and answered their questions. And Principal Mitchell pledged that he will do what is necessary as the manager of that building to ensure that tasks are able to continue forward. So we are working together on this. It is a plan. It is not outrageous, and it's been very transparent. When we consulted with our legal our legal team that advises us, and also with the Litchfield Support Staff Association, we were told that we have every right to make this staffing change today. We can absolutely go in right now and say, this is the way we're going to staff going forward. We didn't do that. We said, effective July 1st, as part of the budget process, this is what we're going to do. And from day one, we have made it crystal clear that this is not about a person, that we believe through attrition and other changes that we will be able to make this change happen in position, not people. And there's a difference. Not everybody who's engaged in the dialogue and discussion about this can separate the people from the positions. We have maintained from the beginning that we're going to staff every position appropriately, and that it will be done by examining those positions and realigning those as we need to do. But yet, every time we come back to this, we're talking about people. And what's really remarkable to me is that 2 tech integrators that we found the funding for are now being held up around a person that we've never once talked about. It's really, really frustrating to sit here and listen to the rationale as to why votes aren't being made, and now to publicly say, well, if you change this, then I'll vote for that. One might call that a negotiation in a meeting. One might call that blackmail. You can pick yourself what you're hearing, but it's very frustrating what's going on. We need these tech integrator positions. That's the bottom line, and that's the question that is in front of the committee, and I hope the committee stays focused on that.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to reconsider opening Articles 2 and 3. What I'd like to do at this point is call the question and do a roll call vote to see if the committee will reconsider opening these.
Mr. Cutter, is it possible to have one more comment that is not personally related? Like it's actually around the article itself?
I'm going to call the motion and go to, and then if it passes, we can certainly continue the discussion. Okay.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to do a roll call vote. Ms. Forty.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes.
No.
Mr. Sun.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Nay.
Mr. Burke.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Leary.
We'll vote to open it back up. Yes.
Yes. Okay. And I am also a yes. That passes. Did I get it? 6-2-0. Okay. So both Articles 2 and Articles 3 are reopened for reconsideration by the committee.
Mr. Chair,
are there any motions or discussion?
Go ahead. I'll let Mr. Taylor continue with his comment. He was next.
Thank you.
We need to wait until a motion is made before we can get to discussion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion for Article 2, school warrant article.
We have a motion. Yep, we have a motion by Mr. Sun to recommend Article 2. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Burke. Go ahead, Mr. Sun.
I yield to Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Son, thank you very much. Just wanted to speak in regards to the funding of these two positions. I think I've made it pretty consistent throughout my time on the budget committee thus far that the growth cannot happen during a time that the state is reporting a 9.2% decrease in funding on the general fund as well as the education side of things. That really translates to anywhere between, in 2020, $125 million, all the way up to into 2021 of $400 million. I understand that the argument has been made that two teachers at Campbell High School, those positions, have been eliminated because they're not needed. That is correct. When we see that there's a drop of nearly 100 students, I concur that then at that point, those positions aren't needed. So really, those two teachers being reduced should be related to the fact that we have less students. And then I look at this as far as the technology integrators as a growth position, and that's why my stance is against it.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Further discussion, please.
I'd like to echo Mr. Taylor's comments. We keep hearing that we found savings for these positions, and quite frankly, those positions ought to have been reduced regardless of whether or not these integrated positions were proposed. In my mind, they're two separate issues. So yes, it's wonderful. It's great that we made reductions based on anticipated levels of students in the schools. That should have been done regardless. It's that we could have put this in the budget. We could have funded it this way. We didn't even have to come to a school warrant. That to me is troubling. We've made a lot of progress in the last 20 years, but there are still people who remember why the state has a no means no law. They still think very about the football program with less than kind thoughts. And we have come a long way from the school boards that implemented those policies that resulted in those. So when I hear that, well, we could have put this in the school budget. We did this out of deference to the budget committee. I'm sorry, but if we continued with that, then we're not doing what the people had asked. So yes, you did a wonderful job making a school warrant article, but that should have been the first job. That should have been the way it was started. That shouldn't have had to be asked of by the budget committee. That's the way we do things in this town. So yes, thank you for doing the right thing, but but that's separate from my position on this. I remember when we created a position that is currently filled by Mr. Pelletier. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what the exact name of it is, but that was originally touted as for one-to-one technology. So a position was created to support one-to-one technology. And now we're saying we need another one or two, or originally was three. So I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around the fact that we need these positions for one-to-one technology, when the reality is when these are implemented, most of our students ought to be back in the classrooms full time. And I have a hard time struggling with, will this position really truly be needed? This many positions be needed once the pandemic resolves itself. Okay. So those are the thoughts that I am dealing with as you're asking us to reconsider these two warrants.
Thank you.
Can I respond to a few of those things, please?
Go ahead, Mr. Burke.
Okay. So we had the tech position that Jason now holds prior to Jason. There have been several who've held that position. This was created for one-to-one. Then, to clarify, we were very clear as far as these positions. You're making it sound like we're hiding them within our budget. We're very open, very clear that we were looking to fund these through other means. And we brought those to the budget committee. We didn't hide them. And can we stop bringing up the football thing from 20 years ago? Please, let's not make the comparison of what happened 20 years ago with the football team to what's happening today, because it's nowhere near the same situation. And you know it, Carrie.
I'm saying we've made progress since then, and I would hate to see us go back. I'm hearing a lot of similarities.
We're not going back. We're not even clear,
Okay.
not even close.
Let's keep it
I don't
civil,
understand how
please.
you make a
Let's keep
comparison.
it civil.
What happened to the football team 20 years ago? What are you going to bring up next? The track? How that went about?
Mr.
Please.
Bork,
Mr. Burke?
I am
We are
simply
very
saying
clear.
that what I heard was we did as you asked and put it as a warrant article. We could have funded it through the operating budget. And what I'm telling you is, I'm sorry?
We first presented to you that we're going ahead with budgeting it, and you suggested, let's put the warrant article. We did.
Because I don't want to go backwards. I'm just simply saying that that attitude that we
Let's
saw.
keep it civil. Let's
I'm
keep it civil,
trying
please.
to. I'm simply stating my observation that those comments are not moving us towards the progress we have developed. It is that sense that caused us problems many years ago, and I'd like not to go back that way. That's all I'm saying.
Which comments?
Mr. Bork, there have been a warrant article that stated new positions go into warrant articles. The decision, the comment that we choose to disregard that is troubling. You may not be troubled by that, but I am troubled by the fact that we could casually disregard the will of voters that put forward a warrant article for a reason that has been respected for many years. The fact that we could casually suggest that we ought not do it and we'll just do it through the budget, I find troubling. Again, that's my finding, my opinion. You're entitled to your own.
Right.
Are there any other comments from the public or from the budget committee, please?
Mr. Chair, you know, there's a lot of emotions here. We're all passionate about the things that we're passionate about. I've stated my 2 cents multiple times in multiple meetings on why I believe these positions are important. They're necessary and they add value in a pandemic and outside of a pandemic. I think the thing that's most important, and I think we've probably spent the least amount of time talking about, are the dollars and cents here. We cut nearly $600,000 from the school district's budget. And what we're asking is for the opportunity to support and have voters potentially add back in 170, which would still be a reduction of $400,000 from the school district's proposed budget. It's not as if we're not doing our jobs and looking at their budgets and finding opportunities. The school district has come to us with a request for needs that help move them forward as a school district. And we did our job by going through this budget with a fine-tooth comb. And I applaud Mr. Taylor with his line-by-line approach, because I think it does keep us honest. But I think this is also an opportunity to support a need by the school district while still doing our job of adhering to the taxpayers' needs as well.
Thank you. And I would just add to that, Mr. Sun, that it would actually level fund the budget from last year to next year. Level fund, no increase.
There's no increase in spending, but as has been mentioned before, we're losing revenue. We're losing revenue from a reduced enrollment and likely lesser revenue from state and federal sources. So
correct. Thank you for the clarification.
That has to be factored in too. It could be level funded, but it's still going to be a tax increase. I have to say, I'm not in support. I'm not necessarily going to be a no, Mr. Bork, but I may not be a yes on both of them. I'm still debating in my mind.
Mr. Chair, one thing I should have mentioned earlier, and Ms. Douglas just made me think of it. Mr. Bohm commented earlier during the public session about CARES funds. And I think that's one thing we haven't talked about when it comes to the school district. We know they are going to have a second, for sure, potentially a third wave of federal dollars that are going to come in and support not only technology needs, not only resource needs, PPE needs, whatever those are. We know those funds are coming. So I think when we talk about reductions to their budget, level funding, whatever that looks like, we know there are going to be additional federal dollars that are going to be coming to support not only the school district, but the town as well.
Mr. Chair, may I address the board?
I'm sorry, I heard two talking.
Please,
Mr. Mitchell popped up.
Mr. Mitchell, okay.
That was me, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so thank you. I've been here all night listening to the conversation and the dialogue, and it's been good and it's been healthy. I want to start actually by addressing Mr. Taylor earlier, who asked for some sort of data points or quantitative measures that would show the effectiveness of positions like this. And I just feel the need to speak up because my previous school, my previous district did have tech integrators. And so I thought I could provide at least some qualitative observation and analysis to this. And what I want the board to hopefully understand, and maybe you already do, and if you do, I don't mean to be coming across any other way, but there you can look at this from a cost angle, which is simply just dollars or cents, but you can also look at it from a value angle and a return on investment. And that return on investment doesn't just show up in this line. That return on investment and the value on investment shows up in many other lines that are in the budget. For instance, this tech integrator is going to increase our return on investment in staff professional development. It's going to show up in return on investment in technology investments. It's going to show up as a value and a return on investment in even our curricular supplies. Many of the new programs that are coming out have a tech component to that. Having someone in the building or in the buildings to usher our staff and our students through these new components that are now showing up in these new programs is beyond helpful. It may not show up on a spreadsheet, but the value is definitely there. The state, even the state, has moved to student digital portfolios. Having someone there to usher the staff and students through this process, as I've seen, has immeasurable value. Teachers who invest in the district, who invest in teachers going and taking advantage of professional development opportunities often have a tech component, even if it's not an explicit technology professional development experience. Having someone to then usher them through that post time of the professional development opportunity to really get your bang for your buck from that, that is where you really see the value in these positions. So it may not show up as monetary, and I look forward to helping Dr. Jetty and trying to find the studies and some sort of quantitative analysis to prove the value. I could just simply say, having worked with one for the previous 8 years, the value is high, the value is immediate, and the value is daily. So thank you, board, for just listening to me and considering my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Appreciate you joining tonight. Was there someone else with comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just I wanted to make one additional comment as well, if I could.
Please, go ahead.
I think this really highlights the role of the budget committee as being the CFO for the town. I completely understand that, many of us can go ahead and passionately be able to speak to certain items that are near and dear to their heart. And unfortunately, it's just at some point, for the CFO, you need to decide in terms of what can and what can't be taken care of. I think for the voters, this is a beautiful way for them to be able to see the diversity across the budget committee and be able to figure out who they align with in terms of their beliefs. There's people that are very passionate about technology, very passionate about investing in teachers, things of that nature. And then there's also, budget committee members that will go ahead and really try to hold tight as far as the taxes for some of the, fixed income folks as well. So I think the beauty part that the voters should really look at is that they understand where all of us come from and where we stand and why we stand in those particular areas. And then it's going to be up to them to decide what the next budget committee looks like.
Well stated, Mr. Taylor. Thank you very much. Further comment?
Hi, this is Nikki. Just to Mr. Taylor's point, I appreciate those comments, and I apologize that I'm not all together here. I injured my foot and I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm trying to keep up. Myself, I have no horse in any of these fights. I do not have children. I actually can't have children, neither here nor there. But I try to see this as a taxpayer, as a resident of the town, someone that cares about the town. And, so to me, this isn't personal at all. I see it in terms of is it a need that can be funded responsibly? I believe it can. I believe that the need has been proved, and I believe that the funding, both the salary and the benefit lines that are associated with this decision make sense for the positions as described, and that's why I'll be voting for the article. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordy. I think at this point, what I'll do is call the vote, right? We've had plenty of opportunity for comment. I think everyone who wanted to speak has had an opportunity to speak. And so right now we're voting on Article 2 only. It was opened by Mr. Sun with a second by Mr. Burke. And I'm going to do a roll call vote and start with Ms. Forty, please.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas. You're on mute.
All right, I had a good speech planned. I'm going to vote yes on this one, but this one only.
Thank you. Let's see, Mr. Hayes.
No.
Mr. Sun.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Nay.
Mr. Burke. Mr. Burke?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Mr. Leary?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So Article 2 passes 6-0. Okay. Thank you very much. Again, Article 3, same article for the second position for the IT integrator. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
That was a motion by Mr. Sun, I believe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Burke. Thank you very much. Further discussion on Article 3 before we call the vote. Hearing none. Ms. Forty. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to add that it's been identified that we need more than one. The district was asking for 3. The board went with 2 and felt that was ample. 1's not enough. And 2 is the number we came up with.
Hi, this is William Hayes. I lost connection, and I would like to express my vote on Article 2.
We haven't done it yet. We know that. You're not there yet.
Yeah, Article 2, Mr. Hayes, we do have you recorded, please. You're good. We're on Article 3 at this point. Okay. Any further comment before I call the vote? All right, Ms. Forty.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
No.
Mr. Hayes.
No.
Mr. Sun.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Nay.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
No.
And I am a yes. So this is going to be not recommended by a vote of 4-4-0. Okay. All right, I think that concludes the school voting. We voted on Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I don't believe there's anything else on the school side, but let me yield time back over to Mr. Burke for any final updates that may need to be addressed this evening.
No, I don't think anything at this time, but thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Shifting gears then in the agenda tonight, there is member input new business. Any member input that would like to be shared this evening?
Hi, this is Nikki. Just as you know, I know we have deliberative session after this. So this is my 3rd year, and who knows how elections are going to go. So if I don't make it back, it has been a pleasure, and I really have enjoyed learning so much about Litchfield and the budget committee, and a girl that was all words and no numbers, and now I like numbers. Who knew? So just thank you very much.
No, thank you, Ms. Forty. We certainly appreciate your commitment to the town, your commitment on the committee, and personally, you know, as a vice chair, you were great. I really appreciate you keeping me in check this year. Thank you so much.
I hope you come
Final
back, Mickey.
member input.
Yep.
Okay, with that, I'm going to reopen public input.
Just if I may, I want to thank the committee for reconsidering those two, the vote on the tech integrator positions. Much appreciated that. I am convinced that we can work together on these things, that we can continue to improve the process to make sure that we're, you know, bringing forward a budget that is responsible. And I can assure you that I take that responsibility along with the entire administrative team very seriously. We'll continue to examine positions that we have and areas that we can trim. So we're not out there just finding ways to spend money. You know, again, last year when we were in the COVID shutdown and we closed 2 schools, tightened our belts, saved significantly on heating and other costs, and had $700,000 that we were able to return to the taxpayers. You know, we are responsible stewards of the taxpayer dollars, and we are very conscientious about the choices that we make. And anybody who knows me personally knows I'm pretty darn fiscally conservative, and we'll make sure that we spend dollars wisely. And so I take that responsibility along with the principals, the directors, and the school board. And so let's continue to keep working together and pulling in the same direction, because together we're doing pretty amazing things for the kids. So thanks again for reconsidering those positions.
Thank you, Dr. J. Appreciate the kindness and the words. I did have one email come in that I will read, because we're not reconvening again until, I believe, March at this point. And so I want to make sure that I get it in. It is an email that came in from Ms. Harrison, and she expressed concern regarding the conflict of interest presented this evening from Mr. Leary and the tech integrator positions themselves. Just a quick summary of an email that came in. Okay. Anything else?
Can I just say something on a personal note? That I noticed earlier, Mr. Jetty had one of his children come in, give him a hug and a kiss. It's nice to see the love. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. All right, with that, I will close public input and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I heard Ms. Douglas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sun. We'll do a roll call. Ms. Forty?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. We are adjourned 8:00. Deliberative session, just for everyone's notice, will be on February 6th, the Saturday. It's going to be a joint session with the town going first, followed by the school, and then followed by March voting. Thank you, everyone. The Budget Committee will reconvene late March, and I wish everyone a happy and safe start to this year. Take care.
You too. Take care.